Welcome to Connect to Develop, where we provide insight from healthcare leaders on the hottest topic and trends.
Hello, listeners. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode where Erika and I talk about finding, following, and making a career from your why. Erika, can you share with the listeners why identifying and developing their why can help them build a fulfilling career that can financially support them and their families?
Absolutely. I feel that your why really drives you. It's essentially your anchor. It's what you get up to, it's what motivates you each and every day. And once you develop your why and hold on to that why, it's kind of what you fall back to every single day. That means when peaks, valleys, and everything in between. I think having that why really, really clear is what can help propel people throughout their career and throughout their life.
So tell me, for you personally, how and when did you identify your why? And then second part of that question, how have you used it to develop the career that you now have?
Yeah, Marnie, I come from super humble beginnings. And when I say that, everyone has a story. And so for me, I was born kind of into a situation where, I had a young mom. She was 15. It was somewhat of an abusive situation at the time. And yeah, so circumstances by default kind of came out of that were, not what one would find to be ideal. But with that, I had a lot of people who spoke life to me, into me throughout my years. And as I grew up, it wasn't like that had to be what was for me in the future. I really had mentors, teachers, friends, educators that wrapped around me throughout my years, kind of showing me that there was something more. And I, by default, was always a dreamer. And so I kind of held on to that. And throughout my career, I used that because that's my passion. My passion is to do the very same thing for others. And so I love to be able to build teams, build people, help them find their why. And so the career path that I've kind of followed has always been, do I have a place where I can help, serve that person or that individual find their purpose and and find their why, because I know what it feels like to have someone do that for me.
So this is really interesting for me personally, and probably why we resonated, and formed this bond early on, is I come from sort of a similar background in terms of grew up in the early stages of my life with a little bit of trauma, a little bit of, you had to push through it, right? So I was born in South Korea, put on the steps of a police station when I was 7 months, put into an orphanage, and 7 months later flown across the world at 14 months to an incredible family in San Diego who, from an emotional and loving and financial and educating standpoint, gave me every opportunity that was. So much like you, I have put my why into paying it forward and to making sure that I create opportunities that people can either step up to the plate and they can hit out of the park, or they can fail. But at least I've been able to put people in the room to see if they can keep their chair or their seat at that table. And so it's very interesting that you develop teams and I develop opportunities. So that's just really cool that you and I have had similar but mildly different circumstances, and we've taken that. So how could our listeners sit and reflect about their past to identify their why? Let's start with that. What are the 3 to 5 things someone could sit down today if they're still kind of trying to figure things out and say, okay, this is my why?
Marnie, that's a really good question. If I think back to kind of anyone that I've worked with that has been really trying to define or narrow down their niche or their why, part of the exercise that I've done with them is kind of that whole evaluation that probably so many of us have gone through, but kind of really narrowing down, what are your values? What really drives you at the end of the day? What are the things that bring you energy? What are the things that serve you? And then what are the things that you can take that and to serve others? And so being really curious of what that looks like at each stage of your growth, I think is so key because, if I did that exercise 10 years ago, Marty, you could probably say the same. If you did that exercise 10 years ago, look very, very different than today, because at the end of the day, it's an evolution. So being really, really curious to find out what the new and evolved version of you could look like and might look like in 3 to 5 years, and envision that, but also knowing that your values serve as your anchor. So I would say, one, be curious, be willing to kind of level set at the end of each year around your goals, values, where you are in your career. What's your community look like? Do you have mentors around? Do you have people kind of speaking into your path and into your journey? What are the tools and resources that you're continuing to kind of help shape your knowledge base and create depth in the areas that you're looking to grow and learn are some key takeaways that I would suggest.
I love all those points. And I feel like we're almost talking about taking our authentic, what drives us, what gets us up in the day, and we're probably doing it anyways on the side. I feel oftentimes that your career why are things that you do in your free time. You're just not compensated. So if we were to just chunk this out and we were to say, okay, I'm an individual contributor right now. I've been in my job for anywhere from 2 to 5 years. I've gotten really good at it, but I want that next thing. How can I use my why to present a case to my manager or senior leadership or whoever it is that makes the decision on taking that next step, whether it's a direct step above where I am, or maybe it's a step to a lateral spot in the company, which is great because you're still rounding out your skill set. You're becoming, better, a better entity for your company, or if, you have your own job. So what is that next step from individual contributor to taking wherever my career needs to go next?
I love that question, Marty. So I would say a person's why should have a conversion rate, right? What I mean by that is that why can convert into value, very specific value in a specific task. I would hope, or I would imagine that when someone is following a career path, they kind of have an idea or a track of what that might look like or what they hope that looks like. And it usually aligns with what they're good at, what they enjoy doing, and so on. And so that conversion is okay, what is that next role? Kind of unpack that as to how do you add value? How does your skill set add value? And how does that correlate to your why? And then presenting that to your case, kind of making your case to your supervisor, your mentor, so that you're able to define, look, here's where I feel that I have added value up until this point. Here's where I think I can contribute value because this is what I'm passionate about. What I have found is it just for myself and for teammates that I've worked with, for employees that have been on my team, is when they really offer that why and that energy and that contribution, that value, it's like such a great team because you have somebody that is actually enjoying what they're doing because there's alignment with their why.
So one of the things that I did when I was trying to take my why and turn it into the next step and the next step and the next step of the career was I got into sales because I just was curious about people and I loved learning, and apparently I loved teaching. And I think if you're a truly good salesperson, you're an extremely good educator and you follow up just really, really well,
Mhm.
And so I, did enough and had enough accolades in sales to be able to figure out where there was a need. And the need that I found was a subset of physicians, because I was a surgical device rep at the time, that were not very well educated on extra things on top of just the clinical and efficacious use of X, Y, and Z product or technology, or how to care for patients and operate and that kind of thing. So I sat back and said, okay, why would my company be willing to create and fund a role and put resources in to doing what I want to do, which is to help add education where there was currently a gap. And then I presented that business case to the company about why it would help the company, because ultimately what I wanted to do was create that education and help both my physicians and physicians in their peer set around the country, as well as my peers who had helped me, when I was brand new to device sales and, healthcare, and I had to call them and say, can you explain this to me? Can you walk through this procedure? Can you, unpack this pathology for me? But I think what you have to do is take your why and take what you want to do and find out what position or what next step that fulfills what you want to do, but you have to find the business case to the company. So Erika, as someone who built and led teams, if you had someone that was reporting to you and they came to you with an idea, what would you want to see them present to be able to say, yes, I will put resources and I will fight for my piece of the pie to go into that for you?
If I was to have somebody come and present themselves and present a business case for a new growth opportunity, a new role, there's a couple of key things I would really look for. I would look for one, the justification through what they've already done, right? They've been sitting in a role, they have been adding value in that role, they've been growing in that role. And through that lens, they're also seeing opportunities throughout the team. They're probably seeing areas that we need to work on, areas that if we spend a little bit more time and a little bit more resources can even increase the return on investment or add value, greater value back to the end customer, patient, and so on. And I would love for them to be able to paint out that picture and say, this has been working. However, here are my thoughts. Would love to kind of share what I have learned plus what I see if we take these necessary steps. And I would love to be the person to fulfill that because one, I'm qualified. Two, I've been, growing in this role and I'm ready to take the next step. And I think this would be the next step. Someone who really paint that clear picture and bring that to me with their passion, their why, everything that we're talking about would make me, one, take it back, digest it all, maybe ask up some follow-up questions to the person. But I would, if it does align with strategy, I would definitely take that back to the extended leadership team and have that conversation.
That's incredible. Great advice. So the last one before we wrap this up is, what if there is a manager already leading a team and there's something that would really fulfill their why that's not part of their KPIs? Is there a scenario that you've seen where it's almost a PR play that a manager can go to leadership and say, hey, look at what to your point you just made, come with data. My team has been asked to do this. We have successfully hit these metrics. We've made this impact in the business. I want to take on this as well. I understand that it's going to, take time, et cetera. I want the company to invest in it. Have you seen success rates where people are able to get leadership to invest in something that may not directly impact the bottom line of the business, but at least it was positioned in a well enough way, or even they just are thinking, this is an incredible leader. We want to continue to have her or him engaged. Let's go ahead and, give them this at the minimal cost, et cetera, because by allowing them to spend their time here also, they're going to stay super dialed in. Because my experience, quite frankly, and I never understood this, was when someone is just crushing it in their role and they want to be added to a few other things, and that's going to motivate them and stimulate them more, I see managers saying, oh, well, that's going to distract you from X, Y, and Z, and they just squash it. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of factors. I've definitely seen where, there might be a strategic plan in place and we've had to pivot because of exactly what you're saying. There's an opportunity not only to meet the KPIs, but there's this new opportunity that's going to help drive value. I think it depends on the size of the organization. I think that definitely plays a factor because I think there's more buy-in on larger organizations, more leaderships. I think there's a little bit more work and convincing that takes place. I think in your smaller to mid-size organizations, what I've seen is being able to measure that value. It has to be moving the needle on something that is of greater value to the overall, mission and vision of the organization. So it can't just be this miscellaneous area that we're spending assets, resources, and hours, but there has to be a quantifiable value or metric that's saying, look, through doing this activity, we've been able to uncover X. And if we keep doing X, it's going to impact Y in this way. And it's something we should entertain because it's going to bring this level of return, right? It might not be bottom line to your point, but there is some value there that is worth exploring and continuing to kind of nurture that so that the return is able to be measured and eventually give back to the organization in one way or fashion.
That makes sense. Well, this has been a great discussion. I feel, quite frankly, as if we could talk about this in numerous hours and would love to hear from our audience if they have any thoughts about discovering their why, how they've utilized it to either start a business, to get a project funded that didn't exist in their company, or even make a different move either up or laterally to develop a new skill set. Thanks for unpacking this with me, Erika.
Yeah, of course. It's always fun.
You can find more interviews on our YouTube channel at Marney Reid Presents.